Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a pretty wild story. We'll be looking at how a massive, high-stakes superpower rivalry actually built the highly connected, convenience-driven world you're living in right now. It's a literal journey from the tense, nail-biting days of the Cold War straight into your living room.
So, think about this for a second. What exactly connects the smartphone in your pocket, the scratch-resistant lenses in your glasses, and the water purifier in your kitchen to a 1950s geopolitical standoff? I know, it sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie. But the reality is that the fierce, all-out competition to conquer the stars laid the absolute foundation for our modern global economy. Part 1. The Cold War Spark. To really get this, we've got to travel back to the aftermath of World War II, where both the United States and the Soviet Union desperately wanted to leverage new rocket technology to achieve undeniable military and political superiority.
And, well, that tension completely boiled over in October 1957. The Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1. It was just this small, beeping metallic sphere, but as the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth, it caused a massive paradigm shift. For the USSR, this was a moment of immense national pride. It really cemented them as a brilliant technological superpower. But over in the US, deep anxiety. It sparked what became known as the Sputnik crisis, because Americans suddenly realized that a nation capable of launching a satellite could, theoretically, deliver nuclear weapons across intercontinental distances. And man, when you look back at the history, it's amazing to consider how utterly dominant the Soviet Union was in those early years. They were rapidly pushing the boundaries with an incredible string of historic firsts. 1957, they launched Sputnik, and then sent the first living organism, the dog Laika, into space. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin makes history as the first human to orbit Earth. Then they sent up the first woman, Valentina Tereshkova, in 1963, and pulled off the first spacewalk with Alexei Leonov in 1965. It was an astonishingly fast-paced display of absolute space dominance.
Which brings us to Part 2, the American Scramble. Facing these massive Soviet achievements, the United States realized they were rapidly falling behind on a very public, global stage. They needed a goal, a seriously audacious goal, that exceeded current rocket capabilities, so that both nations would effectively have to start from scratch. That American response was drawn in the sand by President John F. Kennedy. In his famous 1962 speech at Rice University, he declared the nation's intent to land a man on the moon. Not because it was easy, but, as he put it, because it was hard. This was the ultimate challenge, designed to organize and measure the absolute best of American energies and skills. But, as you can probably guess, getting to the moon was not cheap. The financial commitment required to pull this off was staggering. Since 1958, the United States has poured an inflation-adjusted $1 trillion into space exploration. $1 trillion. NASA's budget consistently blew past funding for major cultural institutions, which just goes to show you how much of a strategic priority this technological leadership was for the entire country.
And all of that, the trillion-dollar investment, the engineering, the sheer willpower, culminates right here. Part 3. The Apollo 11 Climax.
This historic 1969 mission required three highly orchestrated, intensely complex steps. First, you had the incredible launch atop the massive Saturn V rocket. Second, the incredibly tense lunar descent where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin took the Eagle module down to the surface. And finally, the highly anticipated surface operations in the Sea of Tranquility. Now, the crucial thing to remember here is that this wasn't just some scientific milestone. It was a massive global media phenomenon. An estimated 600 million people watched the broadcast live. Just to put that into perspective, that was roughly 1/5 of the entire world's population at the time. All of them tuning in simultaneously to watch humanity touch another celestial body for the very first time. And of course, it delivered one of the most famous and profound quotes in human history. As Neil Armstrong finally stepped off the lunar module and onto the moon on July 20, 1969, he said those iconic words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." It was a moment of unmatched triumph, beautifully symbolizing the true potential of human ingenuity.
But you know what? The story doesn't end on the moon. Let's look at Part 4, the invisible everyday legacy. This is where those billions of dollars spent on rockets translate directly into the modern conveniences you and I use every single day. You can literally trace an invisible line from outer space straight to your living room. The intense pressure to keep astronauts alive and on target resulted in a massive technological spin-off.
Think about it, the Global Positioning System initially developed for military and space navigation, that's the GPS inside your smartphone right now. Digital imaging created by NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab for space probes, that evolved directly into the CAT scanners, saving lives in hospitals. The advanced filtration designed for astronaut drinking water is the literal basis for your home water purifiers. Heck, even the durable plastics developed for astronaut space helmets gave us the scratch-resistant lenses used in modern eyeglasses. It's everywhere. Every single dollar spent on these seemingly distant space programs returned incredible economic benefits right back here on Earth. I mean, it catalyzed massive global industries. Innovations in space robotics and materials actually transformed the artificial limb sector into a $6.2 billion industry. Water purification, that's now a $14 billion global market. And beyond that, the strict need to reduce payload weights led directly to the miniaturization of electronics, effectively sparking the dawn of microcomputers and cell phones. And that's not even mentioning the creation of thousands of high-tech jobs around launch sites like Cape Canaveral and the Baikonur Cosmodrome. But perhaps the most beautiful, and honestly the most surprising legacy of this intense Cold War rivalry is how the narrative ultimately ended. Part 5. From rivalry to collaboration. We go from this bitter, highly secretive competition throughout the 50s and 60s to a stunning moment of international unity in 1975. During the Apollo-Soyuz test project, American and Soviet spacecraft actually met and successfully docked together in orbit. Astronauts and cosmonauts shaking hands hundreds of miles above the Earth. It was a huge deal. And that incredible shift from rivalry to partnership laid the groundwork for one of the greatest collaborative engineering feats in human history, the International Space Station, or ISS. This multi-nation research laboratory in low Earth orbit definitively proved that space could be a shared realm of scientific unity rather than just another geopolitical battleground. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought. We know that the tense, high-stakes race to the moon gave us the modern, digital, interconnected world we rely on today. So, with modern programs like NASA's Artemis aiming to sustainably return humans to the moon alongside international partners, and with our sights eventually set on Mars, what unimaginable breakthroughs will today's collaborative journeys bring to our future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it changes the way you look at the stars, and maybe the way you look at your smartphone too.